Hello again. We are Chris Lee, Blake Lovell, and Max Barr of Southeastern 14 here to preview Gonzaga's road trip to Lexington, Kentucky to face Kentucky in Rupp Arena. The Wildcats coming off a very impressive win in Nashville over Vanderbilt, a 32-point beat down there. Gonzaga, a brand in college basketball, but this is not the Gonzaga team that we've seen in recent years. Tommy Lloyd now at Arizona, doing a fine job as a head coach there. Things have slipped a little bit in Spokane. Predictive computers love Gonzaga, but the results aren't there. The Zags desperately need this one in order to make a charge at an NCAA tournament bid without winning the WCC tournament. Again, you can catch this one 3 Central on CBS. Before we get into the game, a reminder, this video brought to you by BetOnline. It's playoff time. The usual suspects are heading to Vegas for the championship. Our partner BetOnline is your number one source for football odds, stats, trends, and lines, with everything from point spreads to hundreds of bets on everything from the coin toss to the color of Gatorade. BetOnline is the number one source for your championship wagering. Head to BetOnline today. Join to get in on all the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. Max, we were doing this Friday morning. We don't have lines yet. Ken Palm and Bart Torvik are usually a pretty good guide as to what those lines might be. You've also got some intuition on those kind of things. I'm going to start with your take on this game and have you start with what you think the line might be.
Yep, I've got the line as Kentucky -4. I think it'll be a 2-possession spread, but I do think that the public is going to be on Kentucky here, so I could see it probably -4.5, -5.5, somewhere around between 4.5, 5. Going into the game, I see paths for both teams, starting with Gonzaga. Gonzaga, if you have not watched them yet, if you're not familiar with them, they play very big. They lost their transfer wing in from Eastern Washington beginning of the year, out for the season, Steel Venter. So Gonzaga has had to play another forward, another big at the 3. They've bumped down Anton Watson to the 3 and moved in Ben Gregg to the power forward to start alongside Graham Ike. So they play very big. I believe Ben Gregg is 6'10". Yeah, so they'll have 6'8", 6'10", and then Graham Ike at 6'9", but he plays tall. So they're going to have a lot of size. They're not going to shoot many threes, and they're not going to shoot them that well when they shoot them. But what they do well, and man, do they do it often, is pound the rock inside. In terms of like point distribution on where you get your points from, they're 17th in the nation in most total points from 2. They get about 58% of their points from 2. So man, they're going to go inside, and they're going to go inside often. I kind of like Kentucky's rim protection there. Now we've seen the defense, been an area of question for Kentucky, but I do like Onyenso and how he protects the rim. Moving over to Kentucky, though, man, do I kind of like this Kentucky side in this game. Let's look at Gonzaga and their biggest wins real quick. Their 3 biggest wins are home against San Fran, home against Yale to start the year, and a neutral game against Syracuse. Gonzaga is 0-5 in quad 1. All right, let me just real quick run down these quad 1 games. Lost by 10 to Purdue, lost by 5 to Washington, 13 to UConn, 10 to San Diego State, and then 2 to St. Mary's at home. They have not won a quad 1 game. They've only played 1 quad 2 game on the road, and that was at Santa Clara. They lost that also. This team's best win on the road is at 217 San Diego, who's 4-6 in the WCC. This team has not won a game. I don't know even how are they 22 in Ken Palm? How? I don't know how what is the computer looking at? Because it's not
close games against Purdue and teams like that. I guarantee you that's what it is, and blowing out overmatched opponents.
I mean, close game against Purdue, though. I mean, Purdue was up by 14 with 2 minutes left. It was kind of a blowout. I think the computers are way off on this Gonzaga team. I don't really like them that much. Blake, what do you see with this game?
Well, I like to follow the computers. So, when they tell me something about this Zags team, I've got to listen. And what you said, throw out the nets, the quads, all of this other stuff. This Zags team is going to come in ready to play in Lexington. And the reason I say that is because they are, like you said, you see what they can do offensively. I mean, that would worry me a little bit if I'm Kentucky, because I just think you're still banking on Kentucky having a good defensive game, and they just have not had a lot of those recently. So I know they just come off of a walloping of Vanderbilt, but this is just different, right? Like offensively, the Zags, they're well coached. We know that. Like they're going to run some good stuff. They're going to get some opportunities. I think against this Kentucky team, they are pretty efficient, other than the fact they don't shoot it well from the free throw line, but they don't really get there a lot either. And so, like you said, if you just kind of look at where they've gotten their points here, I'm curious to see if that holds, just based on Yinso's in there, Bradshaw's in there, Big Z's back. There's a lot of things Kentucky could do to throw, things at the Zags here and make it difficult to find the good shots. But I say all that just as the one hesitation I would have for Kentucky is just it's the same story. It's just we want to see how they play defensively against anybody at this point. Sure, giving up only 77 to Vanderbilt in a game that just was not close. There's nothing we can really take away from that. But we do know that some of the better teams that they've played, they've given up a lot of points. So, I think that's clearly an area you're going to circle probably anytime Kentucky plays a good team. I think the Zags are a good team. Like you guys said, I don't know that they're on that level of some of the recent teams they've had. It's not knocking the Zags. It's just reality, I think. But on the other side of it, it's just, with Kentucky, do we know who's playing? Like, do we have any idea yet? Because if we don't, then once again, how can I accurately have a great feel? I know they beat Vanderbilt without Trey Mitchell and DJ Wagner, but this is a different game, and we can say all we want about the computers liking the Zags, even if we don't like them as much as recent teams that they've had. But still, I mean, it's not going to be an easy game where I think Kentucky's just going to walk in and blow them out if they're without DJ Wagner and Trey Mitchell. So that's still my hesitation. You guys, by the time you watch this, you may know if they're playing or not. When we're recording, we don't know yet, as far as I'm aware. So I just still think there's a little bit of a wait and see for me on that. But
let me circle back to something I said. I said close games against Purdue and teams like that. That wasn't exactly what I meant to say. Here's what I mean. Like, Purdue would beat a decent team by 20 points. The Zags lost by 10. A 2-point loss to St. Mary's, which is on a roll. I think maybe has the longest winning streak in the country right now, or close to it. It has played teams like that close. It's not been good enough to beat teams like that. Against the NIT class of teams, Syracuse potentially, teams like that this team has won. San Francisco, a team that's I've seen play, is got some talent. Not an easy win, but it seems like Gonzaga kind of runs up against a wall against teams of this class. Kentucky would be somewhere in between that NIT class and the elite of the elite, like to Purdue's. But look, I think I believe this was Gary Parrish that said Kentucky has never lost 3 straight games at home. I don't feel like this is a spot to start in. Look, we have talked about Kentucky and its inconsistency. We've talked about how it just doesn't defend well. We've talked about how injuries have affected its rotation. You have Big Z going for the best 10 minutes of college basketball one game and then just not even being a factor since then. You have Rob Dillingham taking a bigger role. You have Reed Shepherd playing more a little lately and playing well. But you also have DJ Wagner being out, Mitchell being out. I mean, it's just been – Kentucky's been all over the place. But one thing that's been consistent, this team can score. This team will give up points. But most importantly, this team is at home. I'll start our picks with going with Gonzaga.
Wait, what?
I mean, Kentucky. Pardon me. What?
Wow, what a swerve!
Dog is howling in the background, and it totally got me off my game.
Wow, what a swerve! I was like, boy,
my pick is Kentucky.
That was a lot to go with the Zags. You heard it here first, folks. Kentucky fans. Chris is once again. Chris anti-Kentucky. I'm not surprised. Consider me shocked there.
Man, yeah, that threw me for a loop. Few more things that I'm looking at here because I know that I I talked about how Gonzaga, has a really good interior game. If you look at Kentucky's defensive numbers, especially in SEC play when the competition is kind of bumped up, they do one thing really well defensively. Only one, though. They only do one thing well, and that's block rate. They're second in the SEC in block rate. Everything I don't look at opponent free throw percentage as anything. You can't control your opponent's free throw percentage.
Sure you can, Max. You can put your hands up. You can do the ooh.
That is
Kentucky's not doing well enough there. They got to get a little more.
Section.
Get a little more into it, man. Come on.
Yeah, so maybe the Kentucky student section needs to be a little bit more crazy on these free throws.
Throw a howling dog at them. That'll get them off their game.
Yeah.
But other than that, the block rate is the thing that they do well. And especially with Onyenso, I think that number is climbing pretty fast. So I do like the Kentucky rim protection. And I don't think this Gonzaga team is going to be able to score enough and run enough with this Kentucky team. You're playing, I'm telling you, Ben Gregg and Anton Watson are playing together on the floor. One of them is going to have to play the three, and neither of them are a three. To the core, they're not. They're playing out of position because of the Steele Venters injury. This Gonzaga team has not beaten anyone good. I know they lose to St. Mary's, and St. Mary's is good, but that's at home, and you're favored to win that game. You got to win that game. They only score 62 points. So I'm going Kentucky here, and probably what is my most confident pick in some time. I think Kentucky's gonna put on a show here. I don't think Gonzaga's that good at all.
All right. Well, Chris has picked the Zags. You picked Kentucky. I'm just kidding. Look, I know the Kentucky's going to block some shots, but I do think the Zags are going to at least get the shots they want to try to get, if that makes sense. Not saying they're going to execute those shots and or get them to the rim if they're blocked, but I think they're going to at least get the opportunity to take the shots they want to take. And if they do, then I think that they can make this thing interesting. And I think, as I said earlier, I would love to know, as we're doing this, if Wagner and or Mitchell are going to play. If they don't, then, certainly maybe you take a point away here, whatever the spread. I don't know what it winds up being. Again, I don't do this necessarily from a betting perspective, but I'd love to see those two guys on the floor for Kentucky, because that would, make me a lot more confident about saying, hey, yeah, this Zags team just can't keep up with this Kentucky team. I'm still going to pick Kentucky because, like you said, if you just do the law of averages, Kentucky losing 3 straight home games is just not something we can anticipate probably and or predict that's going to happen. But I'm just curious more than anything. Again, I just want to, again, as the resident, I'm not worried about Kentucky's defense 3 weeks ago. I want to see. I'm a little concerned at times with it now. So I just want to see how they play defensively, because, as we said, I'm not knocking the Zags. It's like that they probably don't have the offensive firepower is probably the safest way to put it, that they had, a year ago and years before that. So Kentucky doesn't force a lot of turnovers. So again, that's where I think the Zags will get what they want. Will they try to get it inside against, the size of Kentucky? Can they get the shots that they want? Can they get the good looks? I mean, Mark Few's a good coach. I think he'll put them in a position to do that. But it's just, this is in Lexington, and it's hard to think of, the scenario where Kentucky is going to lose 3 straight home games, especially when they're this talented. But as I said, if Wagner and Mitchell are out, I think that makes things a lot more interesting here for the Cats in this matchup.
All right, we'll be here to recap it probably Saturday night, perhaps Sunday morning. We recap all SEC games. We do that after the Tuesday games, after the Wednesday games, and certainly after the Saturday games. Best way to get that, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button too. That helps our friends. We take this seriously. Don't take us too seriously. We have some fun with this. But anyway, we hope you liked our preview of Gonzaga and Kentucky. Thanks for watching Southeastern 14, presented by BetOnline.